Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy, live here again with Hartwell for our wonderful Wednesday that seems to be kind of wet today, but we'll do our best to pass on some good information to you today about human design. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
A wet
So,
Wednesday.
a wet Wednesday, yes. So
Mhm.
this morning, we're talking about the third of the motor centers, the ego center. So
Mhm.
how can you tell us how it differs from the other motors?
Well, each of them, of course, have this different flavor. And,
Mhm.
the sacral is pure power and the emotion is driven by the emotional field and the root is a pressure and a drive and a stress. The
Mhm.
ego is it is about willpower. It's about ego power,
Mhm.
which is something we're all familiar with in the world. We know it when we see it.
Mhm.
And but what we might not know is that power it arises out of the tribal it arises out of the tribal circuitry, which means that it is for our families, for our tribes, for our communities. That's what is
Mhm.
behind that ego energy.
I know we talked about this before we had this conversation about ego, and you said, well, it's not ego in the bad way, it's ego in the good way. So, you know how people tend to use the word ego as, being very cocky and, all of those things. But this is not that. This is more like the willpower, the determination, those types of things is what
Well,
you're
it's
saying.
both. It's both,
Yeah.
Chris. It's
Hmm.
both.
Yeah.
Because some people are not healthy in their egos and some people are. But I
Hmm.
mean, my pet peeve, so many people's pet peeve is ego this, ego that, it's like
Hmm.
fill in the blanks, Satan this, Satan that. It's
Hmm.
like who are you going to blame? Oh, now the favorite thing for people to blame is ego.
Yeah.
And that's my pet peeve. It's like
Hmm.
take some responsibility. You know, it's
Accountability.
all
Yeah.
you, it's all us,
Yeah.
it's all us. So, I
Right.
mean, how are you relating if you're undefined in the ego, which 60 some
Hmm.
percent of people are? See, only
Hmm.
34 or so percent of people are defined in the ego.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a small
Wow.
amount.
Wow. So,
So we have to recognize, well, what is your particular relationship to the ego and how
hmm.
do you feel and how do you in a sense live it out when you're
Hmm.
amplifying the ego energy of other people, and if you do have it defined, how is it operating in you, because people are going to be amplifying you.
Right. Exactly. So, what part of the body do the four gates in the ego center correspond to?
Well, gate 21 is the heart, gate 40
Mhm.
is the stomach, 51 is the thymus, and maybe confusing those two,
26 is the thymus.
and 51 is the gallbladder.
Right.
So
Hmm.
these are pretty important things, and you can
Hmm.
see from the way that so many people have stomach problems, digestive problems,
Hmm.
heart problems. There's this little this little center with only its four gates packs a pretty big punch.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other things that I have come to realize with human design too. And when you're not living your design, is that it creates the health issues. I mean, you can tie the imbalance in your chart when you're not living your design to particular diseases and where they're happening in the body. For me,
Mhm.
that was a really big thing, right? It was like, oh, well, I guess I need to work on that because I have this issue with my liver, or oh, I have this issue with my stomach. So, I mean, for people out there, this is also a valuable tool, I think, for your health and well-being, is getting a human design reading, because you can target how your behavior is affecting your health, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, it could be part of any kind of return to health or
Hmm.
restoration of your health if you're out of
Hmm.
balance, because
Hmm.
living according to strategy and design, what brings us into balance,
Hmm.
living as you were meant to be designed. So, yes, for sure. I
Hmm.
mean, you can't necessarily see it as anything that is it can give you clues to
Right.
what to work on, clues to move you forward. Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of just saying, oh, it's from so and so, or, oh, I ate the wrong things, or I did this. Well, there's a reason you ate the wrong things, right? So I just believe that it's pretty eye opening, especially with somebody who has suffered physical ailments and been able to look at my chart and realize what those are, right? So the Ego Center has a core purpose in life. So what role does it play?
Well, it's what underlies and is the foundation for all our connection within the context of family and
Mhm.
marriage and tribe. It underlines the entrepreneurial way and our desire to live communally and to be
Mhm.
connected with each other through marriage bonds, through so I mean the ego is the center of that energy circuit, right?
Mhm.
And it is also the voice for the tribe.
Yeah,
And
I thought that
so
was interesting that in there you had put that it was connected with the throat and the voice for the tribe.
yeah, and it is hierarchical, so the tribal
Mhm.
circuit is a hierarchical thing, and there's a lot of pressure and a lot of attention being paid to the idea of, hierarchy in society right
Mhm.
now. It's really in
Right.
flux.
Mhm. So how does what's going on in the world relate to the ego then, since you touched on that?
Well, this is something that what human design says, and I think it's intriguing. I haven't looked too deeply into it at this point, but
Mhm.
um, there's an overarching theme prevalent in our, and it's been this like this for 100 years,
Mhm.
but it's the incarnation crosses are themes that are made up of the sun and the earth on the design and personality side, and they underpin the purpose of our lives. Right now, we are in a long-term period that has the 3740 as part of its incarnation. I think it's called the cross of preparation.
Mhm.
Um, and so the theme for the past few hundred years has been um, very strong with the 3740, which is the channel of community and part of the tribal
Mhm.
circuit. It hooks up with gate 40, which is one of the gates of the ego.
Mhm.
And so what it means is that that theme of family has
Mhm.
been and tribe and community has been an underlying theme for a couple of 100 years. And of course, that includes nationalism.
Mhm.
So in a few years, towards the end of this decade, around 2027, human design is saying we're shifting into a different collective theme.
Right.
And the leading up part of that is um, there's a transformation going on at the level of our DNA that is disrupting the tribal circuitry. And
Mhm.
so that's why all these questions are arising for us. This
Mhm.
distrust of hierarchy and this love-hate relationship with tribe and family and the traditions that have held everything together.
Right.
And so this is deeply disturbing for all of us and deeply destabilizing at a psychic level.
Right.
And we're reaching and collectively reaching for a new way of being.
So
Um,
that's really interesting, considering all the what we're going through with the whole COVID thing and all the challenges that families have had, and communities have had trying to gather and be together, something that we've done for many years, right? So it,
yes.
yeah, it aligns. I find that very, very interesting. So if there's any lessons to be learned from the ego, what would it be?
The lessons are all about self-worth and self-esteem, Kris.
Hmm.
And I mean, these are deeply troubling areas for many of us.
Hmm.
Um, and it's around the willpower has the energy to prove itself. It has the energy to do things from a willpower point of view.
Right.
But only 30 some percent of people have that ability. And there's so strong a programming in the ego. It's one of the most heavily conditioned centers. We feel that in order to be valuable, we need to prove ourselves. We need to prove ourselves by being successful in career or doing this or doing that. And we try to make promises. And then we break those promises because many of us don't have the energy to back up a promise energetically.
Mm-hmm.
And then then people just double down. And they just say, no, I really promise now. I really promise. Sorry, I screwed up. I'll do better. And then we try to act as though we had willpower, trying to keep commitments and promises. And we can't do it. And it hurts our hearts. And this is why so many people have heart disease. And so we need to learn how to love ourselves. You're lovable whether you have willpower, whether you have a consistent connection to willpower or not.
Sorry, I had to plug in my computer.
We have to recognize that. Otherwise, we get trapped in cycles of self-hatred where, which bothers our stomach and bothers our hearts. And you don't have to prove yourself. Most of you out there listening to this, 60-some%, you aren't designed to prove yourselves.
Right. You're perfect the way you are.
Yeah. And to not have the ego defined doesn't mean you can't show up in the world and get things done. You don't have to make a promise in order to get something done. What you need to do is be in alignment with your strategy and authority so that you say yes to the right things. Then you have the energy to follow through.
Does that also apply to somebody who has the ego center defined then? You still have to follow your strategy and authority, but
Absolutely.
you just have more
it doesn't, well, it also doesn't mean that you are immune to problems of low self-esteem or self-worth.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So yes, it's important for all of us to follow strategy and authority, because we all want to be part of the tribe. We want to feel like we are valued, and we want to enter into relationships where we feel that, we want to contribute, but we also want to feel like we are receiving. So there's a lot of people get caught up in that around relationships. It's like, why do I feel like I'm doing all the giving? And I've yet to have many people admit that they don't do much giving. All of us think that we're over giving. So it's like, what's that about?
Well, I've never heard anybody say that they take too much.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I've heard people say they give a lot, but I've never ever heard anybody say they take too much.
Very seldom. And so we need to find a new way, better ways to love each other and to feel supported. And of course, the ego being at the heart of the community, the tribal channel, underlines the fact that we are all in this together. What has kept our society, the world that we have built, the entrepreneurial and capitalistic energy that drives our society arises out of the tribal circuitry. And our desire to be in community and in families arises from that. So the tribal circuitry built our civilization. So why are we dumping all our dislike on that energy within ourselves? There's a healthy version of it, and there's not so healthy versions of it.
Exactly. So what would the not self dialogue be that arises related to the ego? So what kinds of dialogue would that look like?
Well, I'm reading from the book now here. It's like, I better do this because if I don't, I won't be worthy. I have to be in control. I have to be brave. I have to pump myself up so I feel worthy and good about myself. And then others will see my value. I have to be loyal so that others will see how valuable I am and so that I can prove to myself how valuable I am. If I just tell it like it is, if I just tell it like this and make this promise, then they will see how wonderful I am. If I show them how trustworthy I am, then they will like me. They think I can do this, so I better prove to them that I can. If I am in control, then I can prove my worth. I'm not a good wife, lover, friend unless I prove it.
Mm-hmm.
So these are sound familiar?
Yeah, it's all about proving yourself. And I
Yeah,
mean, and we really get into that when we're teenagers too, right? You know, we got to prove to our peers that we're just as cool as they are and that we can dress like they dress and we can talk like they talk. And
right.
yeah.
And this idea that closeness has to be earned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you will have heard this from me, I think, already. It's like one of my pet peeves watching TV shows
Mm-hmm.
is that almost every TV show I watch or movies, TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
somebody is saying, I promise this to somebody. Just
Yeah.
trust me. I
Yeah.
promise you, I'll
I
do
trust
better.
them. Yeah.
Every single show.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably count I watched for it all the time and it's like, wow. But I
Yeah.
don't hear people saying this in real life. So
All
this is
right.
part of the programming thing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
part of what we see as um, a regular and important motivational force in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it happens though, right? Especially I know from honeymoon relationships and stuff, you know, where somebody's done something. I'm sorry, I'll promise I'll do better. I promise I won't do that anymore. And you know, it does get used. You know,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you've done something wrong, people tend to make promises, right? I promise I won't do this or I won't do that. So what are the gates of the ego? Can you tell us a little bit about each of the gates?
Sure. There's just
Mhm.
4 of them. The gate 21, which faces up towards the throat, is called the
Mhm.
gate of the hunter or huntress, or the
Mhm.
gate of biting through. And it's all about control. It's all about control and the desire for control, to control the circumstances in our life, to manage things well. That's its theme. And so it can be very, very good at managing, and it often needs to work for itself. That kind of energy.
So what does it look like when it's healthy? Because we all know what it looks like when it's not healthy, when people are control freaks and stuff. So what does it look like if somebody has that gate and it's balanced?
Oh, it looks like you, Kris.
Hartwell. Flattery, flattery. Thanks though.
Gate 26 is the gate of the egoist, and it has a real strong energy towards salesmanship and
Mhm.
marketing
Mhm.
and being able to sell people something. Um, it's kind of like it's an energy to be the best. It's an energy to kind of sell things and sort of
Mhm.
convince people of things. Gate 40, the gate of deliverance or
Mhm.
the gate of aloneness, both
Mhm.
names are used,
Mhm.
is about it's about doing things for the sake of our family. It's about delivering. It's about the willingness to provide and say, I want to be there for you. I want
Mhm.
to provide this for you.
Mhm.
Let's be in this together, and I want to provide. The father being the provider kind of energy.
Right.
And gate 51, the gate of shock, is all about a desire to be competitive, to be first at something. And
Mhm.
this isn't always about being competitive with others. It's about upping one's game, so to speak.
Mhm.
Transforming one's life and being the first to do something.
But
Yeah. So
it's like
it's a very
trying to be the best you can be, right?
yes.
Mhm.
Yes, and wanting to be courageous and wanting to kind of be the first man to, you know, land on the moon or be the
Mhm.
first to do this, it's
First
like,
person to do something that's
yeah,
original or unique. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's the
Mhm.
kind of energy. Gate 51 is the kind of energy behind that theme in
Right.
life.
Right.
And I mean, it's fun as we go through all these 64 gates to realize that these are themes that show up and are embedded in all the mythologies and stories that we tell each other. And so each one of those 64 is a particular mythology, a particular way of living in the world. And it is energized by something.
Mhm.
These stories are energized by the very fabric of our biology, the very fabric of our design.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the last one, there was one more, isn't there?
No, we did them all.
We did all of them? Oh, well,
Yeah.
there you go. So, as we're talking about this center too, and you're talking about that tribal channel and that need for the connectedness and stuff, it brings to mind that even when we're alone, we're trying to connect with something, and that would be God or source or the universe. Like, we're just looking to belong somewhere. Like, who am I? What piece do I play in this puzzle? So that being tribal also is probably that looking for that belonging and that place where you can just be you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of the tribal circuitry is, the tribal circuitry channel, the channel of synthesis,
Mm-hmm.
A design of sensitivity, channel 1949, and the 3740, which leads to the ego, are part of the spiritual life of the tribe.
Right.
And, our desire to enter into formal agreements and bonds and marriages with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that, there is a deep spiritual desire, the theme of sacrificing for the sake of our family,
Mm-hmm.
and adhering to the values of the tribe is kind of that 1949 too.
Right. Wow. This has been an interesting subject for this week, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. So next week, I don't know what we're doing. Do you know yet? Or is it going to be a surprise?
I think we might. I think we might go to the G Center next week.
Okay.
I mean, the ego is called the heart. That those
Mhm.
are. It's another name for. It's called the heart center, and it is our lower self. Our ego, will-oriented self,
Mhm.
and the G Center is the higher self. So I hope people do not use ego in sort of a knee-jerk way. That is my desire for people.
Yeah.
Let's recognize the importance of that,
Mhm.
and not vilify it or make it the villain of every story.
Right. Cool. Well, with that, we'll see you guys next Wednesday, 9 a.m. again, where we'll dive into another topic for human design. And hopefully you guys are getting a little bit out of this. And if you'd like to book a reading with Hartwell, or you'd like to do a consultation with him, he's available here at Clarity, 587-596-3333. And he's happy to go on the journey with you. We just want to see everybody be successful, empowered, and be the person that God created you to be. We'll see you next Wednesday.